Hello. I was quite surprised this week to get lots of inquiries from people that have actually been watching these short films. So it's not all entirely in vain, asking for advice about collecting and what have you. So I thought I'd do a very general what to look for when you're collecting things, to pointers, just general pointers this week. And I've got an example to show you, to talk you through that. But before I get started and lunge into that at length, I did see this week, unfortunately, a social media clip, maybe it's on YouTube too, of an expert, not in silver, but telling people that if you've got something that you think is silver and something that you think is silver plate, and you actually bash them together, they make different noises, sounds, pitch, and that's how you can tell them apart. I can tell you that if you do that in my presence, the only sound you will hear is my palm making swift contact with your face or some other part of your body. You do not, I mean, this shouldn't, no one should have to, I shouldn't have to say this. No one should ever hit two antiques together to work out what they're made of. That is possibly the single most stupid thing I have ever heard anybody in the world of antiques say. And believe me, there's some stiff competition. So please don't do that. You're not morons, none of you. Even the morons. Go out, get a book of hallmarks, get a book of electroplate marks. If you're unsure what something is, go and ask an expert, go to a jeweller's. They have x-ray guns now. They don't scratch things or scrape things. They just point a little x-ray gun at it and go ping, and it just tells them everything they want to know. Non-invasive, non-damaging. If you're stupid enough to hit two antiques together, well, the only thing that's going to happen is you're going to damage both of the antiques. Rant over. I shouldn't, it's 2023. I shouldn't have to say that, really, to anybody. But believe me, somebody said it this week and I was open-mouthed in disbelief and rage. We'll put that to one side. Now, somebody asked me this week about a ladle they'd bought. And they sent me pictures, and it was a very nice ladle, lovely pattern, and it had a couple of condition issues. It wasn't expensive, so I wanted to talk about. And this is quite difficult for new collectors. So this is, the older collectors, you can go and make a cup of tea now, but it's about condition of the things you buy. When you start collecting, and everybody has done it, I have done it, every collector I know has done it. You're filled up with enthusiasm and you start buying things, if you can afford it, left, right and centre, or you're less discriminating. And that's largely because the better things, the better quality things, are quite expensive. There are far less of them. And you might think when you start collecting, well, why is this so expensive and why is this so affordable? And it all comes down to condition. Now I want to show you two teaspoons, believe me, they're more interesting than that, that I've religiously guarded for years after finding them, and I couldn't really quite bring myself to part with them. And we're back to huffing on things. They are picture backs. There's two of them. Picture backs, we'll just briefly go over what picture backs are. In the 17th century, you get spoons, trefid spoons with rat tails on the back. That's achieved. Someone isn't meticulously hammering with different tools to make that rat tail. They place it into a die that has that cut into it, and they hammer the silver and it takes that shape. Now, initially, those rat tails are very simple. Then they become beaded. Then they start to have more decoration, flame backs perhaps. And then they have very intricate scroll backs, which are very fine interlacing scrolls all over the back. And that's all cut into usually a bronze die that the spoon is hammered against. So basically, by the end of the 17th century, silversmiths knew they could put any pattern they liked on the back of a spoon. Often it's a simple drop. That's all it is. A drop, a double drop, or a plain rat tail. But into the 18th century, there became a fashion, particularly with the growth of all these sort of secret and political societies, to have different emblems, commemorative emblems, put on the back of spoons. And I think the most common you'll get is something like British Hearts of Oak. So it's an oak with British Hearts of Oak. You'll get I Love Liberty, which particularly commemorated a political event with John Wilkes, who was persecuted by the government. And you'll get all sorts of variations. You'll get milkmaids, chicks, the Dove of Peace. These are double-headed crowned eagles. And these commemorate in 1756 a realignment of European politics, of Britain forming, signing a treaty with Prussia in favour over France and Austria. So it was, it was a big thing at the time. And if you supported it, and if you wanted a commemorative of it, you had a crowned double-headed eagle struck on the back of your teaspoons. And of course, you must remember that having tea and taking tea was a big social thing. It was a time lots of people met up. So what was on the back of your teaspoons was quite a public thing within your circle. So you were making statements all the time. Sometimes you get rare Jacobite wands. So it's largely about politics. It's less decoration. There is meaning to them. Now, that means nothing. I've just gone off on one about pictureback teaspoons. And you get different sizes of spoons as well. Teaspoons, dessert spoons, rarely tablespoons, but most of them are teaspoons. These are Hanoverian pattern. But the thing about them, and the reason I'm showing them to you today, is they are absolutely mint. They're absolutely mint. There are hundreds of pictureback teaspoons, all different rarities, all different values. But so rarely do you get, I'll try and get this, an impression. It's not great, is it, because of the reflections, but an impression as crisp as that. I'll put pictures on Instagram again so you can clearly see what I'm talking about. These are made by Roger Hare in London. Almost all picturebacks, with only a few exceptions, are made in London. There are rare Chester and Exeter examples, and there are die-struck scrollbacks from Birmingham by Edward Sawyer, but largely they're London produced. But the bowls, again, we always know to look at our bowls now and see that they're flat. They've not been reworked, so that is a perfect bowl. A perfect bowl, and it's only very thin, so it could have become easily worn. The impression is crisp, absolutely as crisp as the day it was made. The stem is a lovely colour, and we talk about colour, and lots of people that collect furniture can clearly see when a piece of furniture is a lovely colour. But silver, you have to see things. It's not. This is clean. There's no dirt on the surface, but it's not shining bright. It's got that lovely, slightly soft grey tone that just comes from just years and years of gentle use and cleaning. Nothing abrasive has ever happened to this in the last 270 years, which is a miracle. The thing that really makes it for me, nice clear marks as well. I've put pictures of those. But the thing that really sealed it, that, these were probably the best pictureback spoons I've ever seen, is the engraving, period engraving on the back. Now, you would get initials or a crest. These are initials, so they belong to a gentleman, not a lord or a nobleman. But they're surrounded, and you probably can see that, with the most beautiful and profuse foliate engraving. It's my one regret for filming this on a phone, that we can't see the detail as I'm talking. But again, go to Instagram and there'll be a detailed picture of it. And why is this important? Well, if you started collecting picturebacks, and these would be very expensive. they would be very expensive if you saw them with a specialist dealer, because you will never see better than this. And maybe you can buy 4 or 5 average examples or boring examples or worn examples for the price of just one of these. But there's such rarity with these. These are the pinnacle. These are what collectors that start collecting, they work up to. It's just the way it goes. If you have something with a flaw or a fault in it, a significant flaw or fault, don't mind little dents or nicks or even tiny little cracks or nibbles, it's, you know, on big things, it doesn't really matter that much. But if you've got one of these and half the bowl is missing, or it's been over polished, or the marks are obliterated, or the initials have been erased so it's absolutely plain, it begins to niggle. And the most disciplined and the best advice I can give you for collecting is to look and look and look at things, look at different things, and pursue the very best examples you can possibly afford. It may not be the best example to begin with, because, you know, these things they go up and down in price, but these things are never cheap by comparison with other things. But honestly, try and buy the best. One good example in a 6-month period is better than buying run-of-the-mill stuff every month. It really is. And it's hard. It's very hard, because what makes you a collector is collecting. So it's the act of collecting. But looking can often fill that gap. Lots of long time spent looking, instead of lots of time spent buying little bits and bobs, and then going for the best things, going for the really good things when they come up. And it takes, you know, I'm telling you this now, you can believe me or not, but honestly, if somebody had told me this when I started, it would have saved, 10 or 15 years of absolute heartache. Looking at all the terrible things that I bought when I was much, much younger and wished I hadn't. So there's also a limit. I wouldn't say this if I won the lottery, but there's a limit to how much stuff you can own and enjoy on a daily basis. You don't need to have drawers and cabinets crammed and crammed and crammed with stuff that once you've bought it, you'll never see again for 10 or 15 years. People do that. Keeps me a living, but much nicer to have just a select few things as you go along, and just buy the very best that you can. And believe me, that will give you a lot more joy in the long term. But there we go. But that's just an example. Just think of rarity. This is a rarer picture back. So you've got rarity, you've got condition, you've got the fact that they're beautifully made in the first place, and you've got everything being right about them. Period engraving, clear marks. These are all the things you want to look for, not just with spoons, but with any piece of silver that you see. Has it got its original engraving? Has it got clear marks? Has it got its original surface? Difficult to tell you what the original surface on a piece of silver is. You're going to have to go out and handle lots and lots of it. But that's just a guide, because I know people, lots of people starting out collecting are beginning to watch this, and I don't want you wasting your money on old rubbish that you see, on eBay or on the local village hall, or on a tabletop fair that's worn to buggery and twice as bright, and it looks like a bargain, but it's not. It's not a bargain, because you've bought it at that price probably because nobody else wants to. So just remember that. And the things that people are bidding against you at auction, or horrifically expensive on dealers' websites, they're horrifically expensive usually, unless it's a very greedy, awful dealer. They're usually that price for a reason. They're rare, they're beautiful, they're the exception to the rule. So go out, try and buy a few exceptions to the rule. I've gone on far too long. This will take forever to load. Good Antiques Hunting And goodbye, and see you next week.